So, okay, I only got about 2 seconds in and then I've had to start again, but not to worry. So, welcome to this talk I first did in Witchfest International 2013, 2014 even. Oh, bad Beltane. I'm so tired. Last year. It didn't quite go according to plan. My usual room was switched for a different room, and it threw me. And, well, Witchfest is the craziness of Witchfest. You go to Witchfest, cool. Well, it was insane, as always, and the change of room threw me quite a bit. The clock was on the side of the wall, not at the back. That threw my timings right out, and I was tired. But anyway, and then I did this talk or variation of it, or attempted to do a variation at the Dolmen Grove down in Weymouth last weekend for the Beltane camp there. And again, the Lords of Chaos intervened and completely messed up the schedule and threw me again on there because I had to get off and come home. My talk was just before I was about to leave and it was delayed by an hour or two, and it was not ideal. But hey, these things happen. It's how camp goes. So this is the third time I'm going to try this, and hopefully it'll work, because I'm actually going to try and stick to the script, as quite a few people tell me I should do. I invoke too much of the chaos by just winging it sometimes. So, now, also, just for reference, I'm also doing an audio recording of this one, because should this actually go well, then I will let those that witnessed the Witchfest and the Dolmen Grove one get something that I did actually intend to present. And, well, we shall see by the end of it if it actually makes it there. So, the title of this talk is Cyberpaganism and Chaos Magic. Now, to start off with, and I know some of you already know me, and those that are listening may or may not know, I'm a bit of a nerd, a geek, but I do magic. Now, the point of this talk was to separate two aspects of one particular aspect of my path. Now, the main part, as some most know, will be Comedicism, an Egyptian path, and that's great, but I won't be talking a huge amount of that this time. The primary focus is on an aspect of the other part of the chaos magic, the cyberpaganism. I am, as I say, a nerd, a geek. Look at that, I'm already going off the script, I'm not even using it. Yay. Now, I'll go back to the script. So yes, I'm going to be talking about the role cyberpaganism, a term I picked up during the early 90s. Okay, and we got incoming, yay! Right. Okay, let me just recap. Okay, let me just say hello, and just because obviously those people who are listening at home are going to wondering what's going on now. Okay, just need to get to switch the voice on. Okay, right, okay. Now, as usual, those that are listening, obviously you can't do this, but those here and now, most of you know that you can interrupt. And okay, I have my script. I will, it's already on the website, so I'll post the link to that afterwards. But as usual, as is with all my talks, I like hecklers. So if you have a question, or you want me to repeat, especially as you're listening and it can sometimes cut out on the voice chat here. If you need me to repeat something, say so. I'm always happy to divert. Although we'll try and cut down on the Lords of Chaos intervening too much. But anyway, as I recap, Sweet, can you actually hear me? Okay, no, not getting a response. Anyway, hopefully you can. Now, these two aspects of cyberpaganism and chaos magic have formed quite a significant part. They both have interacted quite a bit. Now, from my geekiness, and it's always been there, I've had an interest in sciences from a very young age, and I still continue to. Various technological things have played a significant role in my life, and not just for mine, throughout the whole of time, really. There's, for example, if you look at stone circles and stuff, and various other aspects of early society, stone markers and a development of reliable timekeeping has led to major benefit, well, not led to major benefits, brought major benefits to complex ritual times, as opposed to early times where you had sunrise and sunset and proximate feel that it could be noon, the height of the sun or the height of the moon. So with the advent of specific timekeeping to an interval based system through the day, that has obviously revolutionized what some paths have for timekeeping. Now, my particular one is, and I'm not going to talk about it much, but obviously in this case I will. The Egyptian temple systems were quite complex, and the same goes for many of the other Greek and Roman particular temple practices. There was quite a strict timetable of things going on, and so observance of those times were facilitated by an interval-based time system that you could rely on. But then there's other things. There's obviously the more recent using a torch, a battery-powered flashlight in ritual, so that you can actually read things or see where you're going without tripping over, should there not be sufficient lighting. And I know there are some, and when I was talking at the Real Life Witchfest, I did mention about having to use torches and so on. In fact, I'm jumping the gun. I'll come back to that, because that will obviously play in a bit in a moment. Now, the question here is, as far as the question I brought to this particular talk at Witchfest, where do you draw the line? Now, cyberpaganism has connotations of using technology for the craft, and all of you here on Second Life, you've probably all been to rituals here or in some form or another. So I think the fact that we are here talking about this kind of thing probably means you're all going to say, yes, this is all perfectly okay. But the question is where do you draw the line in the use of technology within your craft? I thought, and perhaps this was naive, I thought when I had this talk idea of doing it would upset quite a few people. I know particularly that certain groups will not allow technology within the circle. But then I know other groups that will happily quite read from their phone or from an iPad or tablet during ritual. Going back to what I just said a couple of seconds ago, was when I asked this question at Witchfest, one of the replies was, we are an oral tradition, therefore learn and recite the words and know them, so there is no need to be reading from paper, let alone using technology to read from. And I have no problem with that. I quite agree. That is a perfectly valid answer. If your tradition requires you to, and it's perfectly understandable, fine. And for group work, definitely. The only problem there I see is for those that use open rituals. Many of the groups that I work with are open, therefore either you try and commit as much of the ritual to memory beforehand so that you can do it without having to rely on technology, or you allow it. there are these other aspects of how far do you go. A flashlight, do you just say anything with a battery is not allowed? Well, what about other aspects? You've got music's MP3 CD players, should you need background music? What about lighters? Okay, they are not massively electronic, but the piezoelectric that ignites most lighters is still creating a spark through an electrical ignition. So what else do you make use of within the craft, and do you need to even draw a line? Personally, I sort of haven't a problem with that. My view really being is that although obviously I'm never going to change, I don't need to change your minds because you're here and you probably understand it, but are using craft and are working in groups and so on, just consider it's worth exploring. Okay, I don't say let's all go completely nuts and everybody read from their phone during ritual. It is not designed. The technology should not be the focus unless you are using it specifically the transmission of the craft, i.e. if you're here on Second Life doing a ritual, then obviously the technology is a primary feature because to use it to interface. I'll come to some specific reasons as we continue on, especially as we go into the magic side and some of the aspects I found within there. Understand that the ancient peoples, they embraced the technology. If it made their life a little bit easier, then they would have used it. Stone circles, astronomical timekeeping devices are well known, as I said earlier about the clocks. But I think should they have been given a digital watch, then they probably would have said, yeah, I want this. This is brilliant. Any kind of enhancement, anything is valuable. So as long as I said, it doesn't distract you from the focus of the group, then go with it. This kind of embracing technological advances, one of the reasons I then progressed into chaos magic. So I'm a practical type, as some of you probably, and I like my shiny stuff. So we have a TP request. Let's get this sorted, and there we go. Let's just wait for the incoming just before I start on the chaos magic stuff. Hello, welcome. Hopefully you can hear me okay. And say yes, no. Oh, you're settling in. Okay. No, yes. Just so I can now continue where we are. Okay, yes. I'll just continue. We'll work this out after. So yes, chaos magic. Now, my interest is in technology. Sort of have always been there. First it was chemistry, then we had physics and computing and astronomy and all of these things. The concept, my sort of objective is always trying to understand how the world works. So the sciences and magic describe the same thing for me. They both describe how the universe works in a particular way, and they are still all different tools, as well as the science and the magic are still essentially tools and means to understand. So from a very early start of my path, I saw this and I understood this, and was how I wanted to progress, and both allowed me to play. To the entry into chaos began in the early 90s. I was using an online computer system in the UK and called CompuLink, or Kix, CIX. It was the sort of the UK equivalent of CompuServe, or AOL is the more recent version, but it was sort of a forum-based system, mostly frequented by other geeks and journalists and techie people. It was pretty cool hangout. There were also a lot of writers there. Terry Pratchett and Douglas Adams I saw quite frequently around those forums, and it was a pretty groovy place. Now, what also was there were some forums on the occult, so that sort of drew me in straight away, and I soon found a bunch of great people there, and quite quickly I noticed there was this talk of something called chaos magic. They were quite into it, and they then started using this phrase, cyberpaganism. So I sort of threw both of those together and sort of explored this. At the time, this were in my path was, let's think, early 90s. I was around 18 at that point, and was in my first job, and I actually had some money and I could go out and explore. Previous to that, there was little exposure to the pagan environment. There wasn't many bookshops and so on, so most of my reading were of the classical Aleister Crowley, Golden Dawn, all the Levi and all of these other particular, Wilson, Anton Wilson, Spare, and so on. So it was all the big names. But early 90s, I started to see a huge explosion of different sort of smaller names within the pagan community. And this was interesting. And in particular, this chaos magic stuff. And this really perked my interest, mainly because it combined all the my interests in science with magic, and it was like, whoa, this is cool. So I started to read extracts. I'm pretty certain I didn't have any books on the subjects at the time. I think I was just reading frantically any excerpts I could find that were within this forum or generally on the net. There was a few good places at the time. I think some of them still around, sacredtext.com and so on. There's been some really good resources out there on this, and it sort of really appealed to me. Why did this appeal? Well, mainly because this was the forerunner that I found to what we now have here on Second Life, was that there were people using technology in their magic. And I weren't entirely certain at this stage. It was an intriguing thought. Obviously, all the books I'd had previously were prior technological revolution, if you want to use that, the computer revolution. So it was all traditional stuff. It was all ceremonial magic. It was all going out into the woods and not using anything that's remotely modern in there. So this was a radical thing for me. I saw this as subversive, and the way these people were talking were that they were being not quite, I wouldn't say clever, they were being different, and I've always been on the edge, on the edge of many things, and I saw this was, well, this is different, so let's explore. And so I continued. Now, there were some aspects within chaos magic that I was little not just uncertain, but uncomfortable with. There were mentions of Baphomet, some fairly dark things. At the time, I had early 90s, and this is through to the mid 90s. I was also exploring some fairly dark areas of my psyche. At the time, I was starting to relate to this deity that I've been with ever since, Salket, my scorpion goddess. And so there was a lot of interest in exploring that relationship. Now, I've always been a dreamer. I've always worked with my imagination, and my built-in way of working my craft is to use what tools I have, and that's obviously my mind, because I noticed that I could create imagery and make it happen. So, which I now know is creative visualization, but at the time I didn't know, because those were new words to me. And there was sort of projection, lucid dreaming, and so on. So this relationship that was going on with my deity was quite interesting, and the communication I was having with her suggested that her view was, forget about the physical stuff, the ritual work, explore cyberpaganism, explore chaos magic, because it could lead me to some more interesting things. Obviously, I'd already experienced some interest in that because of the science and the magic side. She suggested that with the dream work, there were aspects within chaos magic that used astral magic, and that was a strong focus. And I should go down that route to explore it, to aid our communication and our work together. And so I explored, disregarding some of the more, not unfavourable, but as far as I was concerned, irrelevant aspects of chaos magic. Now, for those that don't really know much about chaos magic, a quick rundown. Oh look, I've completely skipped half of the notes. Yay! But this is going alright, I'll continue. So, chaos magic, from what I understand, and my understandings can always be limited in many aspects, is sort of the bulk, I would say, is early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. Some say it goes to 70s, some say it goes further back. It was certainly built on aspects of earlier work. And Austin Osman Spare often comes up in regards to chaos magic, mainly to do with his craziness, in a way, his avant-garde approach to art and use within magic. He formulated most attribute a particular form of sigil design to Austin Spare, and some would say it even comes back from prior to him, and he didn't create it, he just reproduced it. Whatever, I don't really care. Chaos magic had not quite a back against the establishment. Think of it as like sort of punk magic. Cyberpunk. I'm not sure if cyberpunk is anything to do with it. Maybe. I'm not quite aware with it today. Chaos magic sort of formulates the idea of tradition. It's restrictive. It confines you to within a set of parameters. And that restriction stops you from experimenting because you work within those parameters and you don't go out of them. Breaking those rules are bad, such as some of these Wiccan Reed stuff with the harm none and 3 times return and all that stuff. They are constraints. What happens if you break them? And this was some of the ideas. Now, there's a few people that work within this. The two that I'm more familiar with, and there are others, is Peter J. Carroll and Phil Hine. They have the 2 main sets of books that I work with. Peter J. Carroll is Liber Chaos, and Phil Hine has got sort of cyber, very more cyber. Although they are contemporary, the Peter J. Carroll stuff seems to feels older, more traditionalist in a way, if you want to call it traditional, whereas Phil Hine's more relaxed and not as stuffy, and it's very experimental. Whatever, however you feel, it's down to you. But those are the 2 that I like, and I definitely recommend them. They are hysterically funny. Now, the idea is, in a gist, and this is my interpretation. I could read you from those books, but I won't. So you can go and read them yourself. Go find them. There's the thoughts that, obviously, as systems are restrictive, go and do what you want. Go and explore, push boundaries all the time. Now, these boundaries, for me, were a frightening aspect. I sort of have 2 sides to my personality. There's this feeling that I like to stay safe and comfortable. The childlike thing of exploring and being scared. Because being scared is fun. You only have to ask children, and why do you go to the fun fair and go on a roller coaster? Because it's scary and it's fun. But it's fear within a defined environment that you can control. Same is with the magic and pushing these boundaries. Now, as I've said, I have this interest in working with the mind and exploring the deep psyche. And I've seen and experienced some pretty strange and terrifying things over the years, but I've enjoyed it, and I've always thought that there are no bounds. Anything is possible, just how probable. And with all the stuff of my interests in the sciences, with cosmology and quantum mechanics, and this was another aspect to chaos magic, I think, that really pushed it forward in the mid to early 90s, was the interest in mathematical chaos theory and the advances in quantum mechanics and the Stephen Hawking's Brief History of Time, which I forgot what the title was at Dolmen Grove, but thankfully someone told me, because I forget these things. And I remember this time, so hey, and I'm off the text now. But so there's this element of experimentation. Now, this also then led to another aspect to chaos magic, stemmed from the traditional magical forms that sort of always perplexed me, and it still does now when people say this, was I've just cast a spell, I'm not sure if it's worked yet, or how do I tell if it's worked? How long do I wait? And that's always bugged me. Now, this is a little bit of an OCD part of me kicking in, mainly probably from the science and the engineering sort of side, and I like to have control over how these things work. And so I saw, well, that's a flaw. If you're casting a spell and you're not entirely certain when it succeeded, how do you know it has? And how do you know what you've done is correct or not? Just too uncertain, and I like certainties. So that sort of rubbed deeply with me. And it's not until more recently that I've heard another reference to chaos magic being described as results driven, and yes, it is. I fully agree there. Not so much within these proper texts that of Carroll's and Hines stuff, but from my own approach, the OCD engineering aspects of my craft kick in, and from a science-based point of view, the prime things there is to test, measure, retest, and progress. Also, from within the mundane aspects of there has been other aspects that have sort of kicked in that sort of echo this process. I used to be a programmer. I still work within the IT field. I've also used to do and still do business process management and project management, and these aspects I soon quickly saw ideal for working with magic. Working with a spell in particular, why not apply these mundane methods to creation of spells and your objective? Programming and project management, they are tasks broken down into smaller tasks, produce as a sum of a final objective. This final objective is usually what most people would cast the spell. Well, why not use these particular methods to do a spell design? And so I've been approaching that aspect of spellcraft for quite some time now. Doesn't mean I will whip out a project planning software and start planning to minute detail. Perhaps I might do a little bit of that. On the whole, it's still analysis and specification for spells. I will say, for example, I want a job, and so I know the tasks that have to be performed to bring about that final objective, and those tasks are then broken down further and further, and then I would cast a spell specifically at those individual things, and that is measurable because there are small single constraints for a very short duration, potentially. I know whether it's working or not. I can measure. If it's not right, I can retest and throw it out again. And so, step after step after step, the final objective is reached. And it's pretty boring. It's not particularly mystical and magical and groovy. And, for example, weather magic is one of a prime example of trying to deal with a chaos system. And I know from experience, if I cast a requirement for weather to be controllable within a short space of time local to me, pretty effective. But further distance and for longer periods, it's not so. And I've done that repeatedly, so I know not to cast for too far away and for too long away, and so on. There could be a complex mathematical calculation to work out the probability of that and effectiveness of that spell, and this is something I'd like to try and do at some point. But the same I've seen for other forms within visualization, wish fulfillment, as I think sometimes it's referred to bring about change in your life. The same kind of thing is if you keep it wide open, the event probabilities are numerous, and the most probable will take action first. You constrain the events down to a narrow field, and it could take longer. Same kind of ratio going on there. For example, if you say, I want some money, and you don't specify how, it will probably manifest reasonably quickly, but somebody could die and you inherit, or you could have an accident, or it's going to take the least cost route. But if you say, I want to win the lottery, then you are constraining it to within a very tight boundary, and it could take some time for all the events to roll together to bring that into reality. I find this really fascinating to experiment with, and it fulfills my very geeky engineering kind of background. Now, other aspects that science and has impacted my craft is other daily routines. I particularly like to make sure that is all around me at the time. Now, an aspect of this overlap between my Cometicism and my chaos, reasonably well established. Within Cometicism you have Mart and Isfet, law and order and chaos, and the control over the chaotic nature of the world to bring about order and that we can live within a safe and pleasant environment. Okay, for the Western world that's reasonably easy, but for the ancient Egyptians, their very thin strip of the Nile was very thin, and they lived on the edge of annihilation, a consumption of the desert. So for them it was a very stark reality. A pleasant oasis on the river banks, you only had to go a little way into the desert and you were in all sorts of trouble. So there's this aspect of making the magic work on a daily routine. For the Egyptians there was no concept of religion. It was magic. It was Heka all the time. It was magic. And I feel along that lines. If you think about it, everything is energy, as we're told, and it is. All these atoms, particles, that everything is made from all the same stuff. And we are star stuff. We come from the stars. It's really cool stuff, and I love it. Now, so for me, magic is everywhere, in everything, inanimate or not. And so I tend to like to engage magic within my daily routine. And this I can do, and I've done in a variety of different geeky ways. The one of the very first, and this is the ultimately geekiest, is the Wi-Fi signal for the home is broadcasting the name of my goddess. So we have invisible radio signal shouting out my goddess's name across the whole area, and that's pretty geeky. It gets really geeky when the password encrypted form of part of the evocation I use to call my goddess. At a geeky level, you can think of it as in the name of the goddess is being seen from my laptop. My laptop says, I want to talk with you, and here's the line of evocation to summon you, and we're connected. It's really seriously geeky stuff, and I like it. But there are other aspects. There are Say, for example, another one I commonly use is that when I get in the car and I put the phone in its cradle in the car and I go to switch the car on and drive somewhere with the music on, I tend to unlock my phone using my travel rune. So I'm casting travel protection every time I go in the car to drive somewhere. I'm using the magic constantly. Same with using some email-based spells. There's the common rune, which people use for making kiss signs on email. This means gift, so I'm giving a blessing every time I put a few crosses on the end of an email, or or even non-techie on a card or something. So I may also include some other random characters, which to most people probably look random, or looks like I've just accidentally bashed the keyboard or face planted it or something. But to me, I would have encoded some intent on that and sent it, and it would be disregarded, but the magic is sent with the email. And there's plenty of other stuff using Twitter and so on to cast spells, and I like to try all sorts of different ways, and I might even use technology for scrying, such as using a fan or washing machine or a detuned TV like you'd get in Poltergeist film. Embracing and finding an interest in how it can translate other aspects that you just never thought about before. And it's always about experimentation. And for those that have not experimented and feel uncomfortable, try something different. If it doesn't work and you don't feel anything from it, no loss. What have you lost? Just one go in the countless things of your daily life. If you do try it that once and something interesting happens you wouldn't have known before, is material, concepts, energy, events, it's everything really waiting for us to meld it and control it and to form it into something we can use. Some people fear it, and that's fine. There's a lot to be said about understanding it, going out and trying it. I, for example, always I'm uncomfortable, out of my comfort zone, when I'm doing talks. Here on Second Life, I'm not as self-conscious as I would be physically when I've been doing the Witchfest and the Dolmen Grove one, for example. I'm extremely self-conscious, mainly because I'm in front of people I don't know, and they're all looking at me. My goddess is very strong that I should try and get out of the comfort zone. You try. If you fail, you learn. And I understand that. Failure, you learn a lot about yourself and those around you, and never be afraid to fail. It is inevitable in one way or another, you will fail at something, and that fear of failure is crippling, and that has held me back many times throughout my life. So now I do these talks, and yeah, today this one is going pretty well, mainly because I'm not as self-conscious. There is still that fear. You need to break through, as I began, where children have this no fear and the excitement to be scared. It is important to try that, and it's liberating to know that you're doing something terrifying, and if you get through it, there's a good buzz and it's a good accomplishment. It doesn't hurt to try. Go out there and do something you have never done before. Be prepared to fail and be prepared to learn. But if you succeed, go a bit further. Push continuously, because there's a lot to learn and a lot to explore and a lot to find out about yourself and others and this world we live in. Thank you. And again, I have completely gone off all the text, so I will throw out the notes. Thank you. You see, that one actually went pretty well. I wish the other two, truly amazing, awesome. Oh, you guys are cool. Thank you. that was third time lucky, and I'm a lot happier with that one. Let me throw out the link. It's at my website. Oh, everyone's lovely. Chaos magic is cool. Third time is a charm, yes. Brilliant. I'm so glad that one worked well. If you is happy to answer, think of anything yet, you know where I am. I am always willing to, everybody knows, but yes, Liber Chaos is a good one. That really takes the mick. Now hang on, I think I have my book list. If I share my book list, it will have those ones in there. If you look in there, there will be some on Chaos Magic. Those are my favourites. Yes, let me actually dig them out properly. I will read them out because obviously those that are listening won't have got that sharing. But let me just find them, and I will. Oh, come on, such a long list. Disturbing. So many bits. Okay, so we have Cyber Magic, Pysber Magic, Advanced Ideas in Chaos Magic by Peter J. Carroll. That's brilliant. Liber Chaos by Peter J. Carroll. Prime Chaos. Now that's a good one. Prime Chaos Adventures in Chaos Magic by Phil Hine. Cyberpaganism. Well, I've done a lot of work with healing and so on through Second Life and outside of it. And interesting. Now, I've got an interest in psychology too, so I'm quite aware of the power of suggestion. So I am careful of is never to give a loaded question. So if I'm doing a session here with someone in Second Life and I'm about to do something with my goddess or direct something to someone, I will be very soft in how I present. I will let them respond, mainly because of this interest in proving how my magic works. As I said about the basic of process management, of event management, I wanted to make sure that what is actually happening is real. So I will not lead them on as a loaded question, and I will wait for them to come back. Okay, loads of text. Aspect, I sort of thought about connection with our technology, we're more connected with our phones. Yes, well, I use the phone for a whole lot of other stuff. Oh, hold an essence of you. Yeah, that could well be. Your technology, you put a lot into the tech, and the alternate reality idea. Well, for example, here, my AV name here, Kia Heiki. Now, I tend to use that in a lot of different places, and it's so much so that people now sort of associate it as my craft name. Originally, phone crystals are used. The quartz crystal is used in timing signals within most technology. It can oscillate. Quartz crystal, perfect timer. It's amazing what sort of stuff's used in all sorts of different places. But some of the industrial lasers use ruby as the medium for the transmission of the laser light. Where was I going? Oh yeah, my AV name. But that comes from Dungeons and Dragons, where I originally got the name Kia, and I then used it on a variety of online gaming stuff, and it sort of stuck. So the geekiness kicks in, and that character was sort of, well, if you've played Dungeons and Dragons, it can get a little bit. You tend to sort of really get into the character. It is you as another person. So you do sort of live another life. And so you do become a different person there in that reality. And so Kia Heiki, an alternate me, but it's still me. But that name exists in the virtual world. But again, I use sort of technology for more, really. I have my journal, my book of shadows, or whatever you want to call it, scanned in, although I prefer to write those in a book. but when I complete the journal, I will scan it into a PDF, and it's always with me on my phone. Also, because I'm geeky and I like backups of everything, I've also got copies of the handwritten text, which I've had since the early 90s, so I do not want to lose it. And so another aspect that I like to use the mobile tech now is, because it's all touchy-feely, is for sigil magic. Little finger painting program apps for on the phone are great for doing sigil work, because you can just quickly draw a sigil on the screen, use it, and then destroy it or keep it for another time if you want to use it another time. So technology is useful without having to waste shed loads of paper. It's great. You know, there are benefits, and I'm sure the ancients would have loved the kind of stuff we've got now, because it's really quite funky. So go and play. Nothing wrong with it. Just don't make it... Oh, yeah, saves trees. Too right. Okay, it's nice to like burn a tiny piece of paper and watch it go up into the sky and... Ooh. Well, they would use anything they got their hands on. In Egyptian stuff, they had something called ostraca, which is pot shards. If you've got a broken pot, you don't throw it away, you just use a piece of that pot and you could write on it. It's just a temporary piece of notepaper. So you just write on whatever you could find. So, oh cool, digital is so cool. So you just reuse bits, whatever you find. And yeah, it's whatever. I like to use with clay and wax, and so wax is recyclable and reusable, and I will tend to use that for a lot of things. Whatever you want. Yes, write a spell online. You can to release 2 different ways. As I said before, you could, if you encode it in such a way that it doesn't look like, it just looks like a piece of gibberish or random typing, then you could stick it at the footer of an email, and most people won't even read it if you've got a long signature. They'll just think it's just junk and it's gone, so you send it. If you were to do particular type of spell and you needed to do a ritual destruction of it, then if you were to do it in sort of a paint kind of app, you can then use an eraser and physically wipe it out on the screen, and then you would, because obviously pressing delete is not quite intent. You need to, because you're having a destructive aspect, you need to make sure you have that intent through the process. So for the fraction of a second that it takes to press a delete button, you're not transmitting it enough. So I would say, if you were to do a handwritten one on the screen and then physically do an eraser to wipe it out, then the intent's there and it's there for long enough during the act of destruction. Oh, brilliant. I'd love to hear what you come up with there, Hayley. That's brilliant. Yeah, that would be really cool. So yeah, it's great fun to explore, and as I say, you explore it. If it works, fine, you've got a whole new string to your bow. If not, then depending on your sort of interest, you could give it another go, or you just go back to what you're doing. Who knows? Yeah, it's sending's a good one, and I do like that. Same with goes for any kind of email, SMS, text, instant messenger, anything like that. You can get away with so many of random typing that people won't know. Yeah, you could send it back to yourself, and you're sending it off out into the ether. It's a variety of different ways. It's interesting, and I like to try. Well, yes, obviously, as I said, with sending it as an email to someone with some random stuff at the end, they're not to know really whether you're being nice. Yep. Good. I see. I'm glad I got a few of you going. This is funky stuff. Yeah, I love playing with this, and yeah. Well, yes, it is. These are tools, and tools are there to be used. And this is the whole point of using technology within the craft, is it's a tool, it's not a focus. You're making use of the tool. You go and play. Oh, guys, you're great. Well, thank you for coming along. It's been a great one. And I think I've got Healing Circle in a week on Monday. And hopefully I might be back for Witch's Brew on Tuesday. So, thank you. I'm all glad you all enjoyed that, and hopefully those that are listening at home will have enjoyed this one too, for what it intended, which is still not quite what I intended. So the notes will go out with it. Thank you. Have a great Beltane, and see you all guys soon, and stay in touch. Until next time. Righty ho, let's see. So this one's going to go uploaded. It'll be on the website also as an audio recording. I think this one worked. It'll be up there probably in the next couple of days.